My name is Phil Turner. My current position, I'm sitting down, but ordinarily I work at Napier University, which is in Scotland. I'm a senior lecturer there and I teach human-computer interaction. My background, I'm an Englishman working in Scotland, which is always fairly interesting. My background's a mixture of psychology and I suppose a little bit of computing. Well, I've been looking at the issue of listening, which is sort of active hearing and the interpretation of that, and on the theoretical basis of presence from the perspective of the intentional arc. I don't have one. I think it's in many ways only part of a question. It really is, to my mind, it's present where. That's the more interesting question. I think there's a missing predicate in there. To be present seems like the question, what is it like to be? I don't know what the answer to that question is. To be present is like to be. I think it's a more concrete question we should be asking than that. So I don't really have an answer to that question. No. There's a need for breadth. It's the reverse. I've listened to 5 or 6 papers this morning, and with one exception, they were quite narrow. They were hypothesis testing, taking one factor, examining whether that factor has an effect on whatever. And I came away thinking, well, this is all very clever, but I'm really none the wiser. I think it needs more breadth. I think it is a naturally rich, cross and even multidisciplinary field. And to treat it as technology meets psychology is just too narrow. Well, when we say science, I mean, there's 2 answers to that. I mean, what sort of science? Is it a social science? Well, I think it could be. Is it a natural science? Potentially, if we treat it like biology. It depends whether you're treating it like biology, as some people are with their neurological studies. If we're treating it like social science, then it's a social science, and with that goes the variety of methods, techniques, assumptions, and so on. Again, it really depends on whether we're treating them as natural sciences or social sciences. It has a place in social sciences because, well, we teach, for example, we teach social presence as part of our computer-supported cooperative working program, which is a conjunction of social psychology, sociology, and technology. So it really, it's one of those things which overlaps with so many different domains, and it depends where you're coming from. I see a lot of people coming from this from computer science, and increasingly from the biological approaches. I guess it's a conjunction of all these things. I was playing Doom. Remember Doom? Shooting the monsters. At lunch one day in about 1993, I was looking for a topic to do my PhD in, and I found it interesting that people could swear they were very involved in the computer game. You know, the monster would shoot them and they would sway out of the way. I thought, this is very interesting. So I guess it's Doom was the answer to your question. I'm interested, I think there's a couple of interesting gaps in presence, and that's mainly to do with the qualitative and the conceptual, which are 2 areas I'm interested in. So I think it's a very rich area to work in because we can bring a wide variety of other disciplines, and I just enjoy working with breadth rather than with depth. This is a problem. I was working on a different project, and we were staying in a hotel, well, the Hilton chain, and there's an in-house magazine, and it said there, virtual reality will never work because it will require the businessman to get into a suit and put on a helmet. And I thought, yeah, fair point. I think until we get past those problems, I can't see any major applications for VR/presence research. For myself. I've got a long-term interest in space exploration, and when we finally get to Mars, I want to put on a VR suit and walk on Mars along with the astronauts. Yeah, well, I've done some work with memory, and particularly with the area of false memories, and the idea of digitally and therefore seamlessly manipulating people's memories, people's histories, people's pasts, home movies, this kind of thing, absolutely terrifying. I think there are some real issues there to do with people's autobiographical and episodic memories. What is that expression? The illusion of I don't know, what is it? You know that famous quotation where you get the definition of presence, which is the illusion of non-mediation. There it is, the illusion of non-mediation. That's the biggest technological problem. You're always going to have somebody wearing some sort of technology, you're always going to be aware of it. And until that isn't visible, you're always going to be brought back to earth. I'm not really an experimentalist, so no, thank you. I think I was having an interesting conversation with someone about whether we could induce LSD-like experiences with people, and I think that's quite an interesting thing. So we're sort of reinventing the 1960s all over again. We're doing psychophysics in presence research. We're doing very basic visual perception stuff. So I don't see why not. Yeah, let's try and do LSD using electronic media instead. No. Not remotely, no. More seriously, it's about the conceptual clarity. How do we use philosophy to allow us to think very clearly about these very everyday ideas, like being in a room, being in a certain place, how to think about those things very clearly. And I think a lot of the time we don't. We jump straight to experiments instead.